In this section of the book, we're going to look at being paid for piecework or receiving tips in your work. So what piecework is this is when a worker is actually paid for the amount of work that they complete. And so someone like a factory worker or a writer or an editor, they're going to be paid, a writer will be paid by the number of pieces they write. A factory worker may be paid by the number of pieces that they process. A data entry person may be paid by the amount of data that they enter. So they're going to be paid by the amount that they get done. And with some of these jobs even, they may even receive an incentive bonus, which means they get a percentage increase on a certain number of pieces if they're able to complete a higher volume. Tips is also another way that people get paid. So if you go out to eat or you get your hair cut or something like that, a lot of times you pay a base pay for what you got, and then you also give the person who served you or helped you or cut your hair or whatever, you give them an extra amount on top of the amount that you paid, like the restaurant, or that you paid for the service that they did for you. So tips would be money that goes straight to the employee, and it's paid for from the customer rather than the employer giving them that money. Now, something to note about these types of pay. An employer is required to make sure that their employees at least make the hourly minimum wage. And so there's something called a state minimum wage, and there's something called a federal minimum wage. In Ohio, the current state minimum wage is $9.30 an hour. And for the federal minimum wage, it's $7.25 an hour. So why are there two? Well, the federal government wants to make sure that every state at least pays $7.25 an hour, and that a lot of states actually have a higher minimum wage than the federal minimum wage. So in this case, because Ohio's minimum wage is higher than the federal minimum wage, then everyone in Ohio is required to make at least $9.30 an hour. Whereas if there was a state that had a minimum wage that was lower than the federal minimum wage, that state would then be required to either up their state minimum wage, or everyone in that state is at least required to be paid the federal minimum wage. So no matter what, if you're paid by the piece or your income is supplemented with tips. So for example, a lot of times servers don't make $9.30 an hour and then make tips on top of that. A lot of times a server may make $3 an hour and then customers give them tips. And sometimes they may not make, with those tips plus the number of hours they work, they may not make on average $9.30 an hour. If that's the case, then the employer is required to pay them more money to make sure that at a minimum they at least receive $9.30 per hour in Ohio. So that's what that means when it says that the employer is required to cover the difference. They have to make sure that their employees, with the amount that the employer pays them plus the tips, or if they pay them by the piecework, they have to make sure that they at least get, on average, the minimum wage amount for that state or for the federal government if the state's is low. So let's go on to see an example of how piecework pay. So in this example, we've got Piotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky wrote Swan Lake. He was paid 25 rubles for each unique instrument he fully composed. He first started with writing a piano reduction so that he could get his idea on paper, and he could use that to then block for all the other instruments. He wrote the harmonies and melodies for each individual instrument. The piano piece itself is not included on the final score sheet. So how much money was he paid? George Balanchine is famous for choreographing Tchaikovsky's Nutcracker in 1954. In the first year, he played the part of Drosselmeyer, who was Clara's godfather who gave her the Nutcracker toy. He was paid $100 per dancer that he choreographed, and he got 20% bonus if he choreographed more than 100 dancers. The Nutcracker requires 150 dancers for each performance. He is also paid by the number of performances that he dances in. He danced in 47 performances and was paid $200 per performance. So how much money did he make that year from the Nutcracker? So there's a couple things we have to figure out here. We've got his choreography that we have to pay him for, and then we also have to pay him for his performances. So the first thing we're going to look at is the choreography. He had 150 dancers. And it said that the first 100 were paid at $100 per dancer. So there's no extra pay for any of these dancers. So that's $10,000. But the next, anything over 100, which would be 50 dancers here, they're paid for the $100. And also they get a 20% bonus on top of that. So we're going to go on ahead and calculate out how much you would have been paid for each dancer. So that's that's $5,000. And then he also would have gotten an extra 20% on top of that. So that gives him an extra $1,000. So just for the choreography, we have $10,000 plus the $5,000. So we have this $10,000 plus this $5,000 plus the extra $1,000. So just for choreography alone, he made $16,000. Then it says he also got paid for performing. And so we'll put that in here, performance. So when he performed in 47 different times, and we're going to multiply that by $200 per performance. And so that gives us $9,400. And we can actually add these two together, and this will give us $25,400. So this is the amount he got from his choreography. This is the amount he got for his performances, and overall he got $25,400 for doing the Nutcracker that one time in 1954.